The stars shimmered like scattered coins across the black void as Jack Tanner leaned back in the pilot's seat of the drifter. His ship wasn't much to look at, scarred hull, patched-up engines, and a flickering control panel that buzzed more than it beeped, but it was home. Jack liked it that way. Out here, on the edge of known space, he didn't need fancy. He needed tough. And the drifter was tough, just like him. 5 years ago, he'd walked away from the Galactic Patrol, tired of taking orders from men who cared more about power than people. Now, he hunted bounties, chasing credits and freedom in equal measure. The comms crackled to life, pulling Jack from his thoughts. A holographic figure flickered into view, a council envoy, face hidden in shadow. Jack Tanner, the voice said, smooth and cold. We have a job for you. Jack smirked, sipping from a dented metal cup. I don't work cheap. What's the catch? The envoy didn't flinch. The target is Kalia, a Vexery female. She stole an energy core from Outpost 17. Dangerous little thing. Fast, clever, and wanted alive. 2 million credits if you deliver. Jack raised an eyebrow. 2 million was big money, enough to fix the drifter and disappear somewhere quiet. The Vexery were rare, a species of lithe, green-skinned aliens with sharp minds and sharper claws. Extinct, some said, but clearly not. Where is she? He asked. The envoy's hologram shifted, showing a dusty planet called Reiner. Last seen in the markets. Don't underestimate her, Tanner. She's trouble. The transmission cut off, leaving Jack alone with the hum of his ship. He set course for Reiner, the engines groaning as they kicked into hyperspace. 3 days later, he touched down on a cracked landing pad surrounded by swirling sand. Reiner was a trader's paradise, stalls packed with glowing tech, alien spices, and shady deals. Jack pulled his cloak tight, his pistol snug against his hip, and stepped into the chaos. His eyes scanned the crowd, a hulking Torvak hawking scrap, a jittery Flinks counting coins, and then, there. A flash of green skin, a flick of a tail. Kalia. She moved like water, slipping between stalls, her emerald eyes glinting with mischief. A satchel hung at her side, bulging with something heavy, the core, no doubt. Jack followed, keeping his distance. She stopped at a vendor, haggling over a glowing orb, her voice sharp and teasing. Too slow, old man, she laughed, snatching the orb and tossing a single credit in return. The vendor cursed, but she was already gone. Jack closed in, his boots silent on the stone. He reached for his cuffs, ready to end this quick. But Kalia spun, her tail whipping out, knocking the cuffs from his hand. Nice try, human, she grinned, her fangs gleaming. Before he could react, she leapt onto a stall, then a rooftop, vanishing into the maze of Reiner's spires. Jack cursed, scrambling after her, but she was too fast. By the time he reached the roof, she was a speck in the distance, boarding a sleek skiff that shot into the sky. Back at the drifter, Jack found his fuel lines slashed and a note scratched into the hull, "Catch me if you can, big guy." His jaw tightened. She'd played him, left him stranded with no fuel and a bruised ego. But Jack wasn't the type to give up. He patched the lines with spare parts, fueled up from a shady dealer, and punched her skiff's last known trajectory into the NAV system. "You're mine, little thief," he muttered, the engines roaring to life. This wasn't just about credits anymore. It was personal. As the drifter lifted off, Jack's mind raced. Kalia was clever, sure, but he was stubborn. He'd hunted worse than her, pirates, warlords, even a rogue AI once. She didn't know who she was messing with. The chase was on, and Jack Tanner didn't lose twice. Out there, among the stars, a game of wits had begun, one that would test his grit and spark his curiosity like never before. Jack Tanner hunched over the drifter's control panel, the dim glow of the screens casting shadows across his weathered face. Reiner was a fading speck behind him, but Kalia's skiff had left a faint ion trail, a breadcrumb he couldn't ignore. His fingers danced over the NAV system, plotting a course toward the Koran Belt, a jagged ring of asteroids where pirates and smugglers hid their sins. If Kalia was as smart as she seemed, that's where she'd go. Jack grinned, a spark of excitement cutting through his frustration. She'd humiliated him once. Not again. The trip took 2 days, the drifter weaving through hyperspace with a rumble that shook the hull. Jack spent the time preparing. He rigged a decoy energy core from spare parts, a glowing orb of wires and scrap that looked real enough to fool anyone who didn't crack it open. Kalia wanted power, he'd give her a taste of it. His plan was simple: bait her, trap her, and haul her in. 2 million credits danced in his mind, but so did her mocking grin. This was more than a job now, it was a challenge. The Koran Belt loomed ahead, a chaotic swirl of spinning rocks and dust. Jack eased the drifter into the shadows of a massive asteroid, cutting the engines to a whisper. He broadcast a fake distress signal, claiming he was a trader stranded with a priceless cargo, an energy core. Then he waited, eyes locked on the scanners. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the creak of the ship. Just when he thought she'd outsmarted him again, a blip appeared, a sleek skiff slicing through the belt straight for him. Jack's pulse quickened. He activated the decoy, letting it hum loud enough to ping her sensors, and hid the drifter behind a jagged rock. The skiff slowed, hovering near the bait. Through the viewport, he saw her, Kalia, green skin glinting under the asteroid's faint light, her tail flicking as she scanned the trap. She didn't hesitate long. With a burst of speed, she snatched the decoy and darted back to her skiff. Jack smirked. Gotcha. He slammed the drifter into gear, engines roaring as he closed the gap. Kalia's skiff twisted through the asteroids, fast and nimble, but Jack knew this game. He fired a volley of EMP pulses, not enough to destroy her, just to slow her down. One hit, and her skiff sputtered, drifting toward a flat asteroid. She crash-landed in a spray of dust, and Jack was on her in seconds, boots crunching as he stepped onto the rock, gravitational cuffs in hand. Kalia scrambled from the wreckage, clutching the fake core. Her emerald eyes narrowed as she saw him. You again, she hissed, tail lashing. Jack didn't waste words. He lunged, but she dodged, quick as a shadow, and kicked the cuffs from his grip. They danced across the asteroid, her speed against his strength, until Jack feinted left, then tackled her. She hit the ground with a grunt, and before she could squirm free, he snapped the cuffs around her wrists. They hummed, pinning her arms with a soft gravitational field. Game over, Jack said, catching his breath. Kalia glared up at him, but then her lips curled into a smirk. You're good, human. Better than I thought. He hauled her to her feet, ignoring the compliment. Save it. You're worth 2 million credits alive, and that's all I care about. She laughed, sharp and wild. You think this is about credits? Look at the real core, big guy. Jack frowned, glancing at her satchel. He pulled out the stolen energy core, a pulsing sphere of blue light, heavier than it looked. What's so special about this? He demanded. Kalia's smirk faded, her voice dropping low. It's not just power. It's a weapon. Your council wants to use it to wipe out my people. My world's dying, and they'd rather finish the job than help us. He stared at her, the words sinking in. Jack had seen corruption before, wars fought for lies, planets burned for profit. But this? He shook his head. You expect me to believe that? You're a thief. Kalia's eyes blazed. I'm a survivor. Steal this, and I can save what's left of the Vexery. Hand me over, and you're signing our death warrant. Before Jack could respond, the asteroid shook. 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace, black, unmarked, bristling with guns. Mercenaries. Jack swore, dragging Kalia toward the drifter. Friends of yours? She struggled against the cuffs. No, yours. They're after the core too. Laser fire erupted, scorching the rock around them. Jack shoved Kalia into the ship and bolted for the cockpit, powering up the engines. The mercenaries closed in, their ships faster than the drifter. Jack twisted the controls, dodging blasts, but a hit rocked the hull, sparking the shields. Uncuff me. Kalia shouted, stumbling into the co-pilot's seat. I can help. Jack hesitated, trusting her was a risk, but another blast decided for him. He released the cuffs, and she sprang into action, her fingers flying over the weapon's console. She fired a burst of chaff, tiny decoys that confused the enemy scanners, giving Jack a window to dive behind an asteroid. Nice trick, he grunted, banking hard. Kalia grinned. Learned it running from fools like you. Together, they wove through the belt, Jack's piloting matched by her quick thinking. She hacked a nearby asteroid miner's drone, sending it crashing into one of the mercenary ships. It exploded in a fireball, and the other two broke off, retreating into the dark. The cockpit fell silent, the drifter drifting safe for now. Jack turned to Kalia, her green skin catching the console's glow. You're still my prisoner, he said, but his voice lacked bite. She leaned closer, uncuffed and fearless. Am I? Or are we partners now? Jack didn't answer, but his mind churned. She'd saved his skin, and her story gnawed at him. Was she a liar, or a fighter like him? Either way, the chase had shifted. His punishment wasn't over, it was just beginning. The asteroid belt faded into the distance as the drifter hummed through space, its engines straining after the mercenary attack. Jack Tanner gripped the controls, his knuckles white, his mind racing. Kalia sat beside him in the co-pilot's seat, her green skin shimmering faintly under the cockpit's lights. The energy core sat between them, pulsing like a heartbeat, a prize that had turned his simple bounty hunt into something far bigger. Her words echoed in his head, a weapon, a dying world, a council ready to kill. Jack didn't trust easy, but doubt had crept in, and he hated it. Where are we going? Kalia asked, her tail flicking against the seat. Jack didn't look at her. Somewhere safe. The Veil Nebula. No one tracks anything in there. She nodded, leaning back, her sharp eyes studying him. Smart move, human. But you're still deciding if I'm worth believing, aren't you? He grunted, keeping his focus on the NAV screen. You're a thief. I don't buy sob stories without proof. Kalia smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then listen. The core isn't just energy. It's a fusion destabilizer. Point it at a planet, flip the switch, and the crust cracks like an egg. My people found it first, buried in our ruins. The council took it, called it theirs, and now they're testing it, on us. Jack's jaw tightened. He'd fought in the fringe wars, seen colonies vanish under accidents the Galactic Patrol never explained. Her story fit too well. The Veil Nebula loomed ahead, a glowing cloud of purple and gold, its tendrils twisting like a living thing. Jack piloted the drifter into its depths, the ship shuddering as sensors flickered out. The nebula's interference would hide them, but it made flying a nightmare. He relied on instinct, weaving through gas pockets and radiation flares. Kalia watched, quiet for once, her claws tapping the console. You're good at this, she said finally. Most humans would have crashed by now. Had a lot of practice running from trouble, Jack replied, easing the ship into a calm pocket, a rare bubble of clear space. He cut the engines, letting the drifter drift. Silence settled over them, thick and heavy. Jack turned to her, his voice low. If this core's a weapon, why steal it? Why not tell someone? Kalia's gaze hardened. Who'd believe a vexery? We're scavengers to your kind. I stole it to stop them. To give my people a chance. Jack leaned back, rubbing his stubbled chin. He thought of his last mission with the patrol, orders to bomb a settlement, no questions asked. He'd refused, walked away, but the guilt still burned. Let's say I buy it, he said. What's your plan? Hide forever. Kalia shook her head. Expose them. The council's meeting at Torin Station in 5 days. Every big name in the galaxy will be there. Show them the truth, and the council's finished. He stared at her, weighing her words. It was crazy, sneaking into the most guarded summit in space with a stolen weapon and a wanted alien. But something in her voice, her fire, stirred him. Before he could answer, the ship jolted. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. Jack spun to the scanners. 3 drones, Council tech, sleek and deadly, had pierced the nebula, closing fast. Damn it, Jack growled, powering up the engines. They found us. Kalia leapt to the weapons console, her fingers a blur. How? This place is a black hole for trackers. Jack didn't know, but he didn't care. He yanked the controls, sending the drifter into a steep dive. A drone fired, a plasma bolt sizzling past the hull. The shield sparked, dropping to 70%. Hold on, he shouted, banking hard into a radiation cloud. The ship groaned, metal creaking under the strain. Kalia fired back, her shots wild but enough to scatter the drones. They're too fast, she yelled. Jack's mind raced. Outrunning them wasn't an option, not here. He scanned the nebula, spotting a swirling vortex of gas and gravity ahead. It was a death trap, but maybe their only shot. Strap in, he ordered, pushing the engines to their limit. Kalia's eyes widened. You're not, yes, I am, he cut her off, diving straight into the vortex. The ship shook violently, warning lights screaming as systems failed. Navigation died, then comms. The drones followed, their sleek frames glinting in the chaos. One hit a gravity shear and crumpled, exploding in a flash. Jack gritted his teeth, guiding the drifter by feel, his hands steady despite the madness. The second drone closed in, firing again. The shields flickered, down to 40%. Kalia cursed, then grinned. Wait. She punched a command into the console, jettisoning a fuel canister. It tumbled into the vortex, and she detonated it with a shot. The blast caught the drone, shredding it in a fireball. Jack glanced at her, impressed. Not bad, thief. She winked. Learned that running from you. The last drone veered off, lost in the storm. Jack pushed deeper, sweat beading on his brow, until the ship broke through into a quiet center, an eye of calm amidst the chaos. He powered down, letting the drifter float, and slumped back, breathing hard. Kalia unstrapped, her tail brushing his arm as she stood. Told you we'd make a team, she said, her voice softer now. Jack didn't argue. He looked at the core, then at her. If we do this, Torin Station, it's not just about your people. It's about stopping them for good. Kalia nodded, stepping closer. I know. That's why I need you, Jack. Your grit, your crazy ideas. Humans don't quit. He met her gaze, her emerald eyes fierce and alive. For the first time, he didn't see a bounty. He saw a fighter. Okay, he said, voice firm. We're in this together. But we need a plan, and a damn good one. Kalia's grin returned, sharp and daring. Good. Because I've got a few tricks left. Jack chuckled, the sound surprising him. His punishment had shifted, less about catching her, more about what they could do together. The nebula stretched endless around them, a canvas of possibility, and Jack felt a spark he hadn't known in years, purpose. The drifter hung in the nebula's comm center, a battered speck against the swirling purple and gold. Jack Tanner ran diagnostics, the console humming as he patched what he could after their escape. Kalia paced behind him, her tail flicking with restless energy, the stolen energy core cradled in her arms. Torin Station was 3 days away, a gleaming hub of power where the galaxy's leaders would gather. Their plan was bold: sneak in, broadcast proof of the Council's weapon, and spark a rebellion. Jack's gut told him it was suicide, but his heart said it was right. "We'll need disguises," Kalia said, breaking the silence. "They'll scan for Vexery. I can't walk in green and grinning." Jack nodded, rummaging through a storage crate. He pulled out a patrol uniform, old, creased, but intact, and a dermal projector, a gadget he'd swiped years ago. "This'll mask your skin. Make you look human for a few hours. I'll play security. We've got one shot." Kalia took the projector, her claws brushing his hand. "You're full of surprises, Jack." The journey to Torin was tense. Jack pushed the drifter hard, skirting trade lanes to avoid patrols. Kalia prepped the core's data, extracting files that showed the Council's plans, test sites, target worlds, her own included. Jack watched her work, her focus sharp despite the stakes. "You're not just a thief," he said quietly. She glanced up, smirking. "And you're not just a hunter. We're both more than they think." Torin Station loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and glass orbiting a blue giant. Jack broadcast forged credentials: Lieutenant Bryce, security consultant, with his assistant, Tara. The docking bay swallowed the drifter, and they stepped out, Jack in his uniform, Kalia's green skin hidden under a human facade, pale, brown-eyed, hair tied back. She adjusted her jacket, wincing as the projector buzzed against her skin. "This itches," she muttered. Jack grinned. "Beauty's pain. Let's move." The station buzzed with diplomats, scaled Torvacs, feathered Lyrians, humans in crisp suits. Jack led Kalia through the crowd, his posture stiff with authority. They reached the broadcast chamber's outer level, a restricted zone guarded by drones and armed sentries. Jack flashed his badge. "Security sweep. Council orders." The guards waved them through, but Jack felt eyes on his back. Time was short, Kalia's disguise wouldn't hold forever. Inside, the chamber was a maze of cables and glowing panels. Kalia plugged the core into a terminal, her fingers flying as she uploaded the files. 5 minutes, she whispered. Then it'll hit every screen during High Commander Vorn's speech. Jack guarded the door, pistol ready. Vorn was the Council's iron fist, a man Jack had crossed once, years ago, and lived to regret. If he was here, this wouldn't end quiet. Footsteps echoed outside. Jack tensed as the door slid open, revealing Vorn himself, tall, gray-haired, his cold eyes locking on them. 2 operatives flanked him, weapons drawn. "Tanner," Vorn said, voice like gravel. "Should have known you'd crawl back." His gaze shifted to Kalia, her disguise flickering, patches of green bleeding through. "And the Vexery rat. Hand over the core, or you're both dust." Jack stepped forward, shielding Kalia. "You're the rat, Vorn. Killing worlds for power. That's low, even for you." Vorn sneered. "Power keeps order. Your kind never understood that." He nodded to his men. "Take them." The operatives lunged, but Jack was faster. He tackled one, slamming him into a panel, sparks flying. Kalia dodged the other, her tail, now visible, whipping his legs out. She grabbed a cable, yanking it free, and the room plunged into chaos as systems shorted. "Finish it!" Jack shouted, wrestling his opponent. Kalia dove for the terminal, slamming the upload key. The screens flared to life, broadcasting the core's data, maps of targeted planets, Vorn's voice ordering tests, the truth laid bare. Alarms screamed as the summit's delegates saw it all. Vorn roared, drawing a pistol, but Jack tackled him, pinning him to the floor. "It's over," Jack growled. Vorn spat. "You'll die for this." The operative Kalia fought recovered, grabbing her. She twisted, claws slashing his arm, but he held tight. Jack rolled off Vorn, kicking the pistol away, and charged. He drove his shoulder into the operative, freeing Kalia. She grinned, breathless. "My hero." Jack didn't smile. "Move." They sprinted for an exit as more guards poured in, Vorn's shouts echoing behind them. The station erupted in chaos, delegates fleeing, guards scrambling. Jack and Kalia fought through, his fists and her agility clearing a path. They reached a service hatch, diving inside as blasts scorched the walls. The tunnel led to the docking bay, but the drifter was swarmed. "Plan B," Jack muttered, spotting a council shuttle. He hotwired it in seconds, a trick from his patrol days, and they launched, the station shrinking behind them. Space lit up with pursuit ships, but Jack wove through debris, Kalia jamming their trackers with a stolen comm unit. "You're insane," she laughed, adrenaline bright in her eyes. "You're welcome," he shot back, pushing the shuttle to its limit. The broadcast had worked, word spread fast, and council ships hesitated, unsure who to obey. They'd bought time, maybe more. Hours later, they ditched the shuttle on a quiet moon, the drifter retrieved by a risky detour. Jack slumped in the pilot's seat, Kalia beside him, the core dark now, its secret spent. "We did it," she said, her human disguise gone, green skin glowing. Jack nodded, exhaustion mixing with pride. "Yeah. Galaxy's a mess now, but they'll fight back." She leaned closer, her tail brushing his arm. "You're not done with me, are you?" He met her gaze, her mischief sparking something in him. "Thought I was punishing you." Kalia grinned, sharp and wild. "Oh, you are. But I want more fights, more crazy plans. With you." Jack chuckled, the sound rough but real. "Guess I'm stuck with you, thief." She laughed, the sound filling the cockpit. "Good. Because you humans. You're too much fun." The drifter lifted off, heading into the unknown. Jack didn't know what came next, war, peace, or just survival, but with Kalia beside him, he felt alive. His hunt had started with a bounty and ended with a partner. Humanity's grit and her defiance had rewritten the stars, and they weren't stopping now.